Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today to hear all about our first funding call. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Samantha Pearman-Kanza. So I'm the principal investigator of CaSDaR. So I'm sort of blindly assuming that if you've gotten as far as actually finding this event and signing up to this to hear about our funding call, you probably, hopefully, do know a bit about CaSDaR, but I don't like to assume too much knowledge. So I just wanted to give you a really brief overview. So if you haven't heard about us, or if you're coming to the recorded version of this video later, so we're the Careers and Skills for Data-Driven Research Network Plus, and our mission is to create a network of data stewards. And I've included our roadmap on the slide because our key plans on top of building this community are to establish the role of data stewards, foster cultural change and recognition for data stewards, and also to develop career pathways for data stewards. We're really hoping that our funding calls are going to be able to help support this work. So a significant proportion of our flexible funding has actually been set aside for these funding calls. And these are really to support data stewardship, very particularly with respect to careers and skills, kind of with the name, and also very much the recognition of data stewardship. So we'll be using these funding calls as an evidence base so that we can really demonstrate the need for data stewardship across different disciplines, different projects, different organizations of all kind of shapes and sizes, to really show how important data stewardship is and what a strong impact it can have. So I'm kind of going to start with some high-level overviews, and then we'll kind of dig into the finer details. So apologies if this sounds a bit complicated. We're very much not trying to make it complicated, but we are trying to make it as flexible and inclusive as possible, which therefore does involve having a few more caveats. But basically, this call has two schemes. So one is the large 70K projects. So these run for sort of the 6 to 9 months. These are bigger, meatier projects. And one is for the smaller 5K projects. So for the bigger projects, we intend for them to start by the 1st of June 2026. And if they run to that sort of full 9 months, they would need to end by the 30th of Feb 2027, which is quite terrifying that we're sat in 2025 talking about 2027, but anyway. These sort of wider timeframes can apply for the mini projects in terms of when they absolutely have to start and end by. We do actually have a suggested timescale for these, as they're only 8 to 10 weeks, but I'm going to explain what that is and why that is when we kind of get to that part of the talk. So timeline-wise, we are launching today, 5th of November. Wasn't actually intentional to be bonfire night, but hey, it's cool. And in order to give us an idea of how many people might apply, we are actually running this registration of interest form. So the link to the form can be found on our website. I think Louise is going to put it in the chat. And this would just be really useful for us. So if you're even thinking about applying, please just do fill this in. It's really short, it's really lightweight. It's just to tell us basically who you are and you're thinking about applying, because this will just give us an idea of how many reviewers we need to recruit. So also, Louise is going to put all this information in the chat, but these slides will be made available as well in Zenodo. So if you come back across it, you'll be able to get access to all the links that are in this presentation. And then the deadline for the call is the 22nd of January. So hopefully enough after Christmas that it doesn't ruin anyone's Christmas. And then we're going to announce successful projects in March, early March. So that will hopefully provide plenty of time for recruitment. So again, I'm kind of starting high level here. I just want to give a bit of an overview of our aims more widely, both from like the CaSDaR perspective, but also what we're hoping to achieve from this call. And then also to give you this sort of overview of eligibility and application criteria before we sort of drill down into the individual projects. So for those of you who can read very quickly and can read all the small text, you might have spotted that a key part of our roadmap is to learn by doing. You know, we have a breadth of knowledge about data stewardship across our team and across our wonderful advisory board and management board, but it's such a diverse, wide set of skills and such a big sort of thing, we can't possibly know everything. So we really feel that the best way is to kind of actually learn by doing and actually have these data stewards on the ground so that we can understand firsthand the different roles and challenges across different institutions and disciplines. And then we can use this information to inform our future activities, also to inform our deliverables. And, you know, again, one of those key ones is actually to establish those clear and accessible career pathways for data stewardship. And we're going to use this to establish an evidence base. So we really want to use this to show this is why data stewards are needed. This is the different type of value and impact they can bring to different disciplines and organisation, and really to show just actually how putting dedicated time and money into data stewardship can make this real impact project in organisations, because I feel like right now not enough places are putting that dedicated time and money into this effort. And through this, we're really looking to sort of drive change through these demonstrations and use this information to support both the development of our network and our sort of deliverables towards the career pathways, but also we also want to iterate and improve and develop. So we're always looking to learn from other people, but also from kind of how we've done things. So we'll be using the learnings from this funding call to inform the next one as well. Now, eligibility-wise, this sounds complicated, but it is also quite exciting, because for the flexible fund allocation, organisations that aren't typically eligible for UKRI funding may actually be considered for support by this funding call. So we have been working actively with the Funding Council on this, again, so that we can try and be as inclusive as possible, because ultimately everybody needs data stewards. It isn't just about the people that are eligible for UKRI funding, everybody does. We really wanted to be able to open this up as wide as possible. So obviously, as ever, this comes with some key caveats. So any funding award must comply with UKRI's subsidiary control regulations. So again, there's links on the slide. There are links to that all over our website. You can go and read that. And again, if you have questions, you can come back to us. And there's also requirements around ensuring that you're adhering to trusted research, which I'll elaborate on a bit or more on shortly. But ultimately, we are trying to make this as wide as possible. So for the applications, we have 2 application forms for the different schemes. So these are Word document forms. They've got quite a lot of hopefully explanatory instructions in them. They can be downloaded from our website, and they will give you all the different sections to fill in, and they'll have quite clear examples of what needs to go in each section, and also sort of approximate word count. And then the submission itself is going to be done via our Qualtrics form. So this will include consenting to our research terms, uploading the form, and also providing some optional demographic data. So just to elaborate a bit on why we're doing this. So firstly, we've got these sort of 2 forms. We're using the Qualtrics form because we want to be able to separate out the different aspects of the data, because we kind of have a few different pronged approaches for what we're trying to achieve with this call. So the demographic data is optional. So it is useful for us. It will be used for kind of internal reporting and to understand the diversity of our community, because, you know, we want to embed EDI into all the things we do. But equally, there's absolutely no pressure to answer any of the questions. Every single one of them has a prefer not to say option. So if you don't want to share that data with us, you don't have to. But then ultimately, that will then be easily separated from the application form, because we're not going to be actually linking anything about that demographic data to the application data. Those are separate things. It's just easy to collect those all in one place. And then we also want to get your consent to our research study. So what we have done is we've got full ethics approval from the Southampton Ergo team to use all of these applications in our research study. So very specific parts of the application form. So when you consent to this, you get information on a participant information sheet. It will tell you exactly which bits of the form will be considered and exactly what will happen to your data. Again, if you have any questions, you can come and talk to us. But basically, specific parts of the application form will be used to create an anonymized aggregated data set. So again, this will still be kept private, but we will use this for some qualitative and quantitative analysis. So we will pick out some sort of very simple quantitative data, but things that we think will really help demonstrate the add to our evidence base. So things like just even how many organizations have applied to us, the different types of organizations, the different domains represented. And then we're also going to do some thematic analysis, some more qualitative work around to provide that additional data around the need for data stewards. So, different types of organizations need data stewardship in these different ways. These different disciplines need sort of this type of work, looking at the current skill sets of data stewardship. So again, none of this will be kind of tied back to you. We won't be publishing great chunks of the forms at all. It's very much just kind of being able to pull together that information so that we can really show, this is this overarching, really strong need for data stewardship. And again, if any of that is unclear, feel free to come and speak to myself and Louise. And then, so this is the fun bit where I explain all the different complicated bits before I go into the actual application. But I wanted to talk a bit about the trusted research thing as well. So basically, this is to support research integrity. So it ensures that you're actually looking at identifying any risks associated with security as it relates to integrity and how you'll mitigate those risks. Now, I will say, again, we're kind of hoping that this won't necessarily be relevant to a lot of people, but equally it is really important from the Funding Council's perspective that we, and our, the university's perspective, that we do this due diligence. So we've included on the forms, on the guidance documents, on the website, lots and lots of helpful links. If you have any concerns about this, just go and talk to the authority at your organisation, come and speak to us. The sort of onus is somewhat on you to make sure that your activities are compliant with the National Security and Investment Act. But again, we're here to help, and I'm sure that a lot of your organisations will also quite easily be able to provide information on that. The other thing I wanted to mention, because again, I'll get into this probably when we do the applications, but for what I've sort of seen on earlier slides, we have this notion of FEC. So FEC stands for full economic costing. So CaSDaR is a UKRI funded network. So we, like all UKRI, EPSLC, any sort of traditional funded network or funded project, we are funded at 80% of our full economic cost. So that means that so in this case, Southampton, our institution provides that extra 20%. So because we are funded at 80%, we then need to fund other people at that same 80%. So the host organisation will then have to find that other 20%. And that's unfortunately just how that sort of funding works. So just to sort of be very clear, so we have given you the numbers at the full 100%. So for the 70k funding call, these are costed 70k at 100%. So this is awarded at 56k. So 56k is what you get, and your host organisation puts in the 20% remaining. And then similarly, for the CaSDaR Mini, like 5k project calls, they are costed at 5k, so 80% of that is 4k, you get that 4k awarded, and then your institution puts in the 20% remaining. So this should be, hopefully, absolute bread and butter for those who are used to doing sort of UKRI eligible funding applications, but for those of you who aren't, we appreciate this isn't common across all of our communities, so please just do approach us for help and advice, and hopefully we'll be able to explain this. And then this is just to give you a bit of an idea. These are the different tables that we've included on the application. So the one on the left, so again, for anyone who is sort of a UKRI eligible organisation, you've done this kind of funding before. If you are, your organisation will absolutely understand this table. This is how your finances need to be costed for the projects. If you are not in that bracket, we've made a simpler table because you won't have the same complexity of costs. And then we've just got a total cost table. So again, not fill in the relevant one for your organisation. And if you're doing collaboration and you've got a UKRI eligible and a non-UKRI eligible organisation both asking for money, fill in both tables. If any one of you's doing it, fill in your relevant table, and then just put in that sort of total cost sum at the end. Again, if you have any questions, do come to us in advance of sending out the form. Like, we will help you and we will explain what's going on. So then to kind of go into the actual projects themselves. So start with the 70k projects. So the purpose for these projects is for individuals to show the value of embedding data stewardship practices in a process, a project, a collection, or an organisation. So these projects are very much aimed at individuals who have established careers but really want to display the benefit of data stewardship to their organisation because they're already doing that kind of work, or they want to upskill themselves in data stewardship to enhance their career prospects. So as I kind of said before, this is the 70k at 100% FEC, which means 56k at your 80% FEC. These projects run from 6 to 9 months. They must start by the 1st of June. And if you remember, our successful projects announcements was 11th of March. So again, we've kind of given that window to do recruitment because not everybody will have somebody sort of in mind for this work. And then we have tried to be as open as we can around the project criteria because ultimately we want the project to showcase the value of data stewardship. So we've given a lot of different examples. They're all on the slide, they're all on the website, they're all on the guidance. So there's a range of different topics that you could do. So, it could be work experience as a data steward embedded in a specific department, could be a project to enhance recognition of data stewardship roles, could be any of the other things on the slide, it could be lots of other things that sort of showcase the value of data stewardship. We're trying not to be too prescriptive because we can't think of everything, and we're really open to hear the community's ideas and the things that they think will really showcase the value of data stewardship. So we are kind of anticipating that the majority of this money, in terms of sort of thinking about those costings, will be used to fund the wages of the people doing the data stewardship work. But equally, you know, there is some prospect for putting in consumables. So it could be travel to a relevant conference, or bringing, you know, going to see a collaborator, running a small meeting. Again, we're pretty open to ideas. If in doubt, just ask us. It's more about just trying to understand the sort of impact and value that the project's going to have. And then in terms of the host organisations, so there'll be quite a lot of benefits to this, we think. So these will actually help the host organisation because there'll be a project that can, you know, potentially support a business case for embedding data stewardship in an organisation, which will both demonstrate why that's important, but also add some value. So you'll get support from us, from the CaSDaR team, to complete the project and to provide you with help and advice and sort of embed it into your organisation. There'll be networking opportunities with the other projects and the people working on this. And there'll also be financial support for a member of the project team to attend our CaSDaR Data Stewardship Conference, because we're going to be running a big conference for anyone and everyone interested in data stewardship, either sort of late 26, early 27. We're still finalising the dates. So in terms of applications, these should be submitted by the project lead, that's kind of the primary applicant, in collaboration with their organisation, so that organisation is going to host the project. And again, you can request up to your 56k at 80% FEC. And just to kind of note, we very much encourage applications from any and all settings. We will be trying to actively make sure we support applications from disciplines and organisations that are underrepresented in the area. Next slide. So then just to go over some sort of definitions, so hopefully it's obvious, but very much the primary applicant is that key person making the application. So they should be the project lead. The host organisation is the organisation that the primary applicant works at, again, kind of subject to those eligibility terms. Because this is sort of a bigger project, if you want to have co-applicants, I mean, I guess kind of more in standard funding speak, co-Is, but we're trying to sort of step away from that. So sort of co-applicants, people that you want to run the project with you. So additional team members, also put them down. You can also have project partners. So it's keen to note that there's particular definitions around sort of what construes a project partner. So you can have pretty much anyone within certain UKRI regulations reason, but you can have anyone as a collaborator, as a project partner, but they don't receive funds from the project. So typically they would make in-kind contributions, whether that's sort of giving up their time or providing some data sometimes, again, subject to potentially ethics approval and collaboration agreements, but actually providing something back to the project as a collaborator. Again, there are sometimes caveats around that, like if they're providing a particular service or equipment. But again, there's a lot of information about that on the UKRI pages, and you can always come and ask us. In terms of staff, so as we assume that a lot of the cost will be to fund the person sort of doing that work. So if you're requesting salary for anyone, we kind of bracket them as staff. And obviously, if you're non-UKRI eligible, then staff. It's worth noting, if you are looking at somebody from a university, just to sort of caveat, if they're doing a PhD or something, that doesn't preclude them from being that person, but you have to make sure that they suspend their studies and that isn't kind of double funding to do their PhD. Again, if you have any kind of concerns around eligibility of people you might want to be staff, you can come and talk to us. There is a wider definition around the notion of a subcontractor for sort of UKRI funding, where if you need something very specific and you've kind of tendered for that position and this is the best person to do it, they can come under a subcontractor. We don't feel that that's necessarily that likely for this kind of project, but we wanted to put the definition in anyway because we're trying not to be too prescriptive. And then we do require collaboration agreements to be put in place. So if you're applying and then you have those collaborators, that is on you to make sure you have the relevant collaboration agreements. So just to give you a bit of an idea about the application form. So the sort of information it will take, there'll be sort of personal details of the applicants and their organisations, so just things like your name, your email address, your job title, enable us to know who you are and how we can get in contact with you. We've tried to make these forms not too intensive, so we've put not hard limits, but we've put word suggestions where realistically, if people go way over, we are obviously going to be sending them back, but also we're not going to be sitting there counting every word. But sort of roughly we're saying around 2,800 words. So sort of high level description of the project, thinking about the milestones, how it fits into the UK research data landscape, intended outcomes, impact of the project, and sustaining that impact of the project, because that's also really important. Like, we really like to think about projects that are going to start and then continue rather than just start, find out something, finish. And then justifying why it's relevant for data stewardship work in the UK, and also understanding how we've kind of you've got the infrastructure and organisation to support your application. And then of course those finance tables, and then there is also a brief bit to sort of do justification of those costs, sort of explain what they are. So yeah, this is just to give you a rough idea of sort of what's expected in the application form. The application form itself lays all of this out really clearly, and we do also have extensive guidance documentation on the website, and in all the documents you can download as well that kind of go through each of the different bits of the form. And then in terms of our requirements, so because these are longer, bigger projects, we would expect kind of a midway report of how things are going, and a final report. We're going to be doing CaSDaR focus groups, again, to collect additional information to add to that evidence base. So we would expect the primary applicants to take part in that. Obviously, as I said, the application forms, parts of those will be analysed as part of our research. And then we're going to use the information of the application forms to add to our evidence base, and we're going to use the actual project reports. We're going to take those and actually turn some of those into sort of high-level case study summaries. So again, we've kind of got lots of nice resources coming out of this for why data stewardship is so important and showcasing its value. And then some of these are going to be similar, but this is then just to kind of go over the 5K projects. So these are much smaller projects running for a lot shorter period of time for less money. So these are very much intended to give individuals sort of an experience into data stewardship, an entry into data stewardship. So these are going to be complemented by training. So the reason we've said we have a specific suggested time for these is because we would like to create sort of a cohort of these people, and we're going to be putting on some training and some kind of careers events. This is all geared around upskilling data stewards and getting people to understand those career options as well. And obviously we can't necessarily do that as a disjointed thing across the year. So we expect that most people will try and fit in with that time frame. Equally, we don't want to preclude people who have a fabulous idea for a short project and for whatever reason it needs to run outside of those timeframes. So again, you can justify why this isn't required. So these could be structured as an internship type thing. They very much don't have to be. They could be equally well suited for staff members who just want some experience in a different area, or whether that's kind of a PhD researcher looking to enhance their skills. But ultimately, whereas the 70K ones were intended for experienced people in data stewardship, the people intended to do the work on these projects are intended for those who are not experienced in data stewardship and therefore require a project supervisor. And it is those prospective supervisors who will be applying for this funding. So again, for the project criteria, we've tried not to be too prescriptive. Again, it's to showcase the value of data stewardship. So but these are on a much smaller level. So it could be sort of cataloging or resource building for an existing collection, could be kind of creating a workflow, creating checklists around promoting fair data, things that are also very much, reasonable to achieve in that kind of time frame, where hopefully they produce something useful, but also the person doing the work, gets some training and gets some experience, and really starts to understand that why data stewardship is so important. So logistics wise, I said they must be between 8 and 10 weeks. So the kind of recommended time is like the 6th of July 2026, finishing on the 11th of September 2026. But equally, if they can't do that for a reason, they can run in that kind of wider time frame. Again, we expect, because these are much smaller projects, that most of the money would just go to fund that kind of trainee data steward. But equally, if there's, and also fund them to attend this event or bring in this collaborator, again, that's also fine. Similar kind of benefits. So the person that comes in will get sort of training in data stewardship practices. There'll be kind of hopefully some development and enhancement of data stewardship at that organisation. We'll be here to support the team. And again, there will be networking opportunities, particularly for those who are taking part in the kind of that cohort bracket over the summer. We are going to be putting together specific networking for those trainee data stewards. And also there'll be financial support for a member of the project team to attend the data steward conference, whether that is the project supervisor or the trainee data steward, depending on the situation. So the project supervisor needs to submit those applications, and then similarly, this is kind of requesting that up to that 4,000 at the 80% FEC. And then this is just to go over the kind of definitions. They're basically the same as the last ones, except we've kind of noted that, well, we've got primary applicant here. So this is the project supervisor. That is the person doing the application. The organisation is where the primary applicant works. Project partners, exactly the same deal. Don't typically get money from this, but they can be on as a kind of collaborator. The trainee data steward, that's the person we assume will be doing the work. Very much if you have someone in mind, this is obviously a much smaller project, you are very welcome to name them on the application. Equally, if you don't, we're trying to give you enough time to recruit somebody in. And then similarly, if you are collaborating with project partners, we expect there to be collaboration agreements in place. So the application form is a bit smaller than the 70K one. So again, it's about 2,000 words. So it'll just be general details about the primary applicant, a high level overview of the project, kind of, again, just the impact, how it's going to showcase the value of data stewardship, financial information with those tables again, and kind of the costings, and also just a brief justification of that. And again, you can name the trainee data steward, or you can just say it's an open appointment. We'll require a short report from both the trainee data steward and the supervisor, because obviously that'll be come from different perspectives. We are expecting the trainee data stewards to make a poster, sort of showcase their work. And then again, participation from at least one member of the team in the data stewardship conference. And again, we're going to be sort of analysing those application forms as part of our research. So nearly at the end, then you can ask all your questions. I see lots of things coming up in the chat. But in terms of just the review process and some of the guidelines, so when we get everything in, the first thing we'll do is we'll screen them to remove anything that's incomplete or insufficient, or anything that is, you know, we've asked for like 2,000 words, you've given us 20, we will be sending that back. So in these instances, Louise will follow up with you and sort of see how to address those. You'll all get a reference number so that you know that that's your particular reference applying to you, and then that will be used in all kind of documentation and contact moving forward. Then we will randomly allocate the applications to reviewers. So we're roughly thinking in terms of people who might, you're probably listening to this because you're interested in applying for the money, but in case you are thinking about getting some reviewing experience, and that's why you're here, projected potentially 5 applications for the 5K project and 3 for the 70K per reviewer. So we don't want to overload people. So for people signing up to be our reviewers, we've got guidance about kind of what to expect on the site. But then if you actually sign up to be one of our reviewers, you can do that through the reviewer volunteer form. Then you'll receive links to the relevant sort of reviewer forms, and also some quite succinct but specific instructions on how to fill those in. So in terms of the applications, for your 5K applications, they'll get 2 reviews, the 70K ones will get 3 reviews. And then we will be convening a review panel to finalise decisions, look at all the scores, look at the sort of consider diversity across the different domains and institutions, and also to kind of have that sort of collective decision making. So again, if you are interested in becoming a reviewer, we'd like to think it's a really nice, friendly, sort of low-key entry to reviewing, then please fill in our reviewer volunteer form. We are obviously putting in place that reviewers can't review for the specific call they're applying for, because we think that would just count very much as a conflict of interest. And then in terms of what we're sort of thinking, we've got a number of criteria. You'll get a score of 1 to 5 and some relevant feedback associated with that. We obviously will look at conflicts of interest, because, you know, there'll be reviewers from all over, but also applicants from all over. So we'll be making sure that reviewers declare any conflicts of interest. And then we'll be looking at we will be obviously giving consideration to areas that are kind of underfunded or underrepresented. and how this data stewardship is going to sort of help in these areas. We're going to be looking at impact. As I said, that's really important, not just that kind of immediate impact, but how is that process or that project or that work going to kind of have a longer term impact. We are very much looking at feasibility, particularly I think for the shorter ones, because we're not expecting outrageous applications. There's only so much you can achieve in this amount of weeks. We'd much rather see something sort of succinct and to the point and sensible than I'm going to achieve all of this in a completely unreasonable short amount of time. And then also thinking about the resources and experience of the applicant in the team, particularly for the sort of bigger projects. And then also is there that sort of infrastructure and support to actually support the project? And is there relevant expertise to support the project and sort of complete it effectively? So those are the things we'll be thinking about. Again, they are kind of listed out on the reviewer guidance page on our website. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible about how we're doing this. So just to kind of pull all of this together timeline wise. So we're on the 5th of November. We have launched the funding call. This is happening. The register of interest forms are live, they're in the chat, everything is up on our website. You can access all of the information. On the 15th of November, we will close the registration of interest forms and just kind of use this as part of our review of recruitment. Application deadlines, 22nd of January, announcing the projects on the 11th of March. And then on the 1st of June, those bigger projects must have started by then. And then the 6th of July is that sort of recommended start date for the shorter projects to take place. So we'll recruit reviewers based on numbers from the registration of interest form, and we're also collaborating with the rest of the digital research technical professional network plus projects to sort of help each other find relevant reviewers. And again, I've just linked to the relevant forms on this page. So just to sort of wrap up the talking bit of this event. So firstly, I just want to say, look, we are here to help. We're genuinely not trying to make something difficult for you. We really, really want to give away this money to the people that are going to make a real impact around data stewardship, and we really want to support you. So if you have any questions, please reach out to support you. You can get us on CaSDaR@southern.ac.uk via our email. Louise has set us up a Discord channel, so that is going to be coming out soon, and we will have some particular events around that where we'll have some more time dedicated to sort of real-time answering of questions. And also, again, you can also leave questions in there. You can ask us questions on our social media. Just there's lots of areas you can get in touch with us. So do get in touch if you have any queries. Wanted to note, because obviously this is a slightly non-traditional way of doing things and a potentially non-traditional type of funding. So we really encourage people from all kind of career backgrounds and areas to apply for this funding. But we're also aware that depending on where you work, particularly maybe within universities, if you're on particular career paths that you might not have experience in applying for funding, or there may be issues about you being a recipient of that funding. So if you have any problems with that, or you anticipate any problems with that, please then come and talk to us, because we are here to support you in this. We're going to run sort of support webinars in December and January, where it will literally just be people can come and ask us questions. As a note, sort of all the questions, we have recorded this, so we will be putting this on YouTube as well and linking to it. We're not going to record any of your questions, so we will stop the recording after this bit. But anything that you put in the chat, any questions that kind of we don't already have on our list, we will constantly increment and add these to our FAQ bank on the site. So hopefully you will then be able to, if you have questions, you can go to the site and see if somebody's already answered them. And then also we just wanted to know, we've put a lot of work into these calls, into trying to make something that showcases data stewardship and is a viable project for that. So when we've had a few people say they want to run similar kind of calls, so if you want to run similar calls, you're really welcome to reuse our materials. So we've licensed all of them under CC BY, and they can all be downloaded from our website. And please sort of acknowledge us, but generally we're very happy to share. There's no point us putting in this work and then someone else having to do the same thing all over again. And again, if you want kind of advice from us around that, please reach out to us. And then this is just, I guess, more to come back to the slides, but just to say there's a lot of web links and documents. So there's a general page about our funding, there's a specific page about this call, there's an FAQ, we've got our forms, there's reviewer information, and then there's both like web pages and full guidance PDFs on both of the different calls, depending on how people prefer to interact with that information. There's application forms. There's also template award agreements. So we've worked with our research innovation services to produce sort of these template contracts. So if for whatever reason your institution wants to see what they'd be signing up for in terms of the funding, they can go and look at these template award. Again, you can come and ask us any questions, but it just sort of sets out the terms of what would happen if you're successful and you get the money. So, and then just to say, in terms of getting in touch with us, these are all of our details. And please sign up to our mailing list, follow us on social media. And again, when we put out our Discord channel, we will be flooding the relevant social networks with that, so that hopefully everybody who's linked in with CaSDaR in some way or shape or form can then understand that that's another communication mechanism.